Everybody, welcome into Going Public. I am Harry McCullough. We're joined this week by David Rabelais, the Executive Director of the Terrebonne Port Commission. Dave, how's it going? How's the summer?
Everything's good, man. We're getting rain now. It's starting to fill a channel, and it's been dry, you know.
Can you noticeably feel the difference?
You get an inch or two.
Inches. Okay, it's not feet then.
No, and then it drains off pretty quick, you know.
But that can make a big difference in a boat,
But you
right?
never know. I mean, it's every little bit helps, you know. I wouldn't bank on it to increase the draft, but it does help. You know?
Well, I imagine it could really hurt too. Like,
well, yeah.
Particularly like I guess in the winter months when a north wind blows out a lot of times.
Exactly.
We're real low. It seems like.
Yes,
So,
you get a low tide. I mean, it blows all the water out.
so I guess that would affect the
Yeah,
channels as well. So what's the status? Recently, I know it's a constant give and take, trying to dredge things, trying to do that, trying to get money to dredge things. So give us the latest on that.
Well, we had 3 dredging projects going on at the same time. One in the bay. The Corps did a contract with to dredge the bay with the RM White and they had to borrow it from the Chafalaya River. And they dredged from mile 4.4 to mile 9.4, and they completed it May 14th. So that was good.
Is that common that they can borrow a dredge from the Chafalaya River to come over here and do that?
I don't know if they borrowed it, but that's where it came from.
Right,
Okay?
I got
I used the wrong word, but
No,
you know,
I got you. That's where it came from.
Yeah.
And good to have a same company that can do that. But so that was pretty quick, almost 5 miles that they've.
Yeah, and it was a 30-inch dredge. It's one of the best dredges in the industry, in my opinion, because we've had it before, and it blows and goes, never has mechanical problems. They're good. So there's going to be another dredge that's going to come into the bay again this summer, and include a second dredge. It's the Barataria Bay Waterway site. It has a dredge, and that. Well, let me back up. Barataria Waterway needs a dredge, and the Corps coupled their project with some deficiencies that we still have in the bay. And so when they award the project, they're going to come to us first. They're going to finish the little section they got to do, and then they're going to go to Barataria. So that's the way they borrow, you know. And the bid is expected in late June. So that's when they're going to get the bid. So I would say by August they should be in there and finished, you know.
Yeah, and I would imagine between the Chafalaya from the HNC over to Barataria, that you can move equipment like that pretty quickly.
Oh yeah,
imagine, huh?
yeah. That's where they work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you have a handful of dredges, and they don't ever leave that area.
Right.
They just go back and forth. You know, they work for the Corps. A lot of them. The Mississippi River is being deepened to 50 feet, and there's a lot of dredges. There's 3 that work in the Mississippi year round. They just keep, what they do is they dredge it and they push it south, and they keep pushing it south. Then they started beneficial use, and they started building a lot of marsh. So they're doing a good job up there.
I always, whenever I pass on Highway 90, like going towards Lafayette, when you cross Morgan City's bridge, you can always see it seems like there's a dredge there all the time.
Yeah. Morgan City has a lot of problems from the Chafalaya.
Those are the same type of dredges.
But Morgan City has their own dredge for a certain type of material, and the Corps does there's a hard sandy material that the Corps does, but there's a fluff that they get in a certain section that the Corps can't. Those dredges those hydraulic dredges that do the hard material, when they get in that fluff, they cavitate, and they can't. They don't move nearly as much. So it takes a different type of dredge. So Mac Wade went out and got his own dredge, and he worked with the Corps, and they have a dredge that's specifically built for that type of material. And that might be the dredge you see.
That's interesting. No, that's interesting. I didn't realize. So the same dredge that might be an H&C, would that also work in the Mississippi River where you got to go 50 feet?
No.
Or that's different?
Well,
that's bigger ones probably.
Yeah, I mean, every area has a different type of little bit of different type of material and different depths. So they have to adjust accordingly.
All right, it's interesting.
And then we have our second dredge in the inland reach from Cocodrie all the way to the intercoastal. And it's Apollo Environmental. They have a 16-inch dredge. Let's see. It's a total of 300,000 cubic yards. They progress is about 90% through June 1st, and they've completed two different reaches. They kind of, it wasn't continuous. They had 3 different areas that they had to dredge, and then on the last area, they said there's 4,600 feet left of channel length remaining to complete.
Wow. That,
So
that happens pretty quick, right?
less than a mile. Yeah.
Now, they're not dredging the entire, that would probably be 25 miles. I don't know, but Cocodrie to the Intracoastal Canal, but it's just certain like 2 mile stretches at a time.
Right, like they dredged from 19.8 to 21.6, and mile 23.7 to 25.9. So it's a couple miles in each one. Did about 29.75 to mile 31, which is 3/4 of a mile. No, a mile and 3/4, and then the final reach is mile 32.3 to mile 35.5.
So they can get that done pretty quick.
Yeah, and they're in that reach now, so they're gonna finish fairly quickly.
I see. And you've got most of the obstructions removed from the agency, and so, barring any other things happening, that y'all can move forward with projects there.
Yeah, and this project, it should be finished by mid-June. So, yeah, and like you said, we removed the obstructions. We're gonna have full authorized depth plus advanced maintenance throughout the whole channel.
Okay. So the other dredge materials that you're going to have, you got surveys coming up. You got all those kind of things, right?
So Shortcut Canal is another project. That's the third project. That's about a 3,000 to 4,000 foot section of channel when you come out of the port slip that connects us to the Houma Nav. Okay. And we had a company called Harbor Dredging that was in there. They just finished. They went back and surveyed, and they got a couple of little spots they got to touch up, which they should have finished today, and if not by early tomorrow, so they'll be finished. And then that big boat that's behind Thomasy is going to sail out Thursday.
So it's completed?
Oh yeah, yep. They're more waiting for the.
So that's
dredging.
what Harbor Dredging is doing, is making way for that boat to get out.
Right. So yeah, and then the surveys that the Corps does after they do, as they dredge and they complete a section, they survey it, and they post all of their depths, their surveys online. Okay, so you can go online at any time and get the latest surveys, and they're all dated. So as they're going, they're posting them online. Everything's looking good. Like I said earlier, we have a whole 36-mile channel that's 15 feet or better, which I don't think we've ever had before.
I was about to say, there's a lot of projects that are coming to completion right here at the same time. Can I ask you about that Thomasy boat again? Where's that boat going to be delivered to? I thought it's going to be in Alaska?
Somewhere on the west coast.
So where would that boat go to get there? Would that have to go through the
Panama Canal?
Right. Okay. That's where it would have to go. That's amazing.
Unless it got wheels on it, they can just cross over.
Yeah, just go through by Terrebonne.
Yeah, right.
But no, it's amazing to me when you think about navigation, and I know I've talked to people and they radio in boats off of Africa and all, but this boat is born right here in Terrebonne Parish, right there at Thomasy's at the Terrebonne port.
It's the first of its kind, from what I've been told.
And go through the Panama Canal, and then end up in
on the
Alaska.
west coast. Yep,
that's amazing.
It's a fish processor.
That is a big old boat.
So, like I said last time, I think it's got a machine on there that can fillet 200 fish a minute or something like that. So that's crazy.
That's
a Cajun couldn't keep up with him unless he gave him a couple cases of beer, but it wouldn't last.
Now when you complete a boat like that, would Thomasy's look for it to make another one? I mean, or are these a one?
I think be
a fleet of these.
I think that's going to be between them and the owner, and it could go either way. They could get another one, or it depends on how much the owner has to spend. I mean, those are expensive boats.
I can't imagine it.
So, I'm sure they're gonna be happy with it.
Yeah.
Thomasy, they do good work there.
So that's one of my favorite things, all the lurds, right?
Yeah, the lurds. That's your favorite word, I know. And for people that don't know what that's saying, that's a core acronym, which they have a million of them. And LURD stands for Land Easements, Rights of Ways, Relocations, and Dredge Disposals. So It covers everything that's not dredging. You know, it's everything you got to do to prepare for dredging. And in the deepening, the federal government's doing the deepening, but we have the obligation to do all the LERDs. The state is the local share partner is the state of Louisiana, and they've agreed to pay for it. So that's what we go to capital outlay every year for the money to do all of that and lower the pipelines and you know all the work we got to do ahead of time.
Well, you got so many things that have been coming together in May and June of this year. Where are you at with the LERDs, and how long does that process take?
Well, we divided that up into two sections: the southern section, which is the last 13 miles, and the northern section. The southern section, they've identified all the pipelines. They're negotiating right now with the oil companies to try to start the lowering of those lines. Meanwhile, they're up the northern section and they're identifying and locating all of those lines. Every line they find, they have to go get a right-of-way agreement and, you know, permits and research them. So it's a lot of work.
It's government work, right?
Yeah.
All right. Dave, we'll take a break. We'll be right back with more Going Public right after this.
A new company with a lot of history. GIS Engineering has rapidly grown its brand around an experienced team of professionals. GIS Engineering is a full-service planning, engineering, procurement, and construction management company specializing in coastal protection and restoration, upstream and downstream industrial, and transportation infrastructure projects. Putting people first, GIS Engineering, a new company with a lot of history.
Led by a 7-member commission, the Terrebonne Port was created to assist our local industry in promoting economic development. We monitor government regulations that affect our local industry and work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to secure maintenance dredging funds. Because the HNC is the main artery for the heartbeat of Terrebonne's economy, Terrebonne Port fights a constant battle for funding to maintain the federally authorized navigable depth. We are now leasing waterfront and non-waterfront property. Terrebonne Port Commission, serving our industry to keep Terrebonne thriving.
In South Louisiana, storms are a way of life. Every storm poses a different threat, whether from flooding or hurricane-force winds. At All South Consulting Engineers, we help protect our people from these disasters. Before a storm, we work with our leaders to prevent catastrophic damage. After the storm, we help get the resources needed for rebuilding. We have helped our cities, parishes, and school boards recover over $2 billion to rebuild our community. We'll be here for the next one.
Hey, welcome back to Going Public. I am Harry McCullough. We're here with David Ravelet, the Executive Director of the Terrebonne Port Commission. We talked about land easement, right-of-ways, relocations, and dredge disposal, LERDs. But GIS is going to do some surveying as part of that to make sure everything's clear in the right-of-ways.
Right. So we referenced earlier, we did the southern section and northern section. So towards the end of May, GIS Engineering went to the northern section and started pipeline surveys, and from Cocodrie all the way to the intercoastal. They ran a magnetometer from mile 12 northward to mile 36. They evaluating the results, and they'll begin to generate drawings of the let's call them utilities, because some of them aren't pipelines. They're just a sewer line, water line. It could be anything. They'll be finalizing all the surveys, and they're going to continue with the initial discussions, as we talked before, with the pipeline owners for the Southern Reach pipelines, which hopefully within the next 3 to 6 months, we go to construction on those and we get those lowered, you know. They also have to do abstract work and find, you know, the lands that contain the original right-of-ways and center line and all that stuff, and they need to, you know, they got to discover everything, you know, they actually look back to the beginning. Who owned everything? They find all of those. Who owns everything now? You know, and so it's a lot of work. You gotta work on it. You know, it takes a long time.
Agency's what, 60 years old, something like that. So in that range. So it's not been around forever.
Right.
So you know, there was people just owned that land before.
That's correct.
Now, let me ask you something though. When you talk about the southern reach and the northern reach, those are total different things, right? Because I'd imagine in the southern, it's probably oil lines, and,
Right.
and probably more industrial things. As the north is more utilities and that kind of
And
stuff. Right?
transmission lines. I
Right.
mean, you do have transmission lines all over the place.
Right.
One time I saw a map of the Gulf of Mexico and all the pipelines in the Gulf of Mexico, and it looked like the most structurally built spider web you've ever seen in your life. There's so many of them out there, and that's just pipelines. That's not flow lines, water lines, all kinds of stuff. That's just stuff carrying hydrocarbons, you know? So I guess that's transmission pipelines.
Right.
You know, that's the ones that they document more in the past. Now they document all of them, but you can go into any oil field and start doing work thinking you got all the pipelines located, and you got another thought coming because there's a lot of flow lines that goes from platform to platform that they just install. They don't get permits to do them. They permitted for the platforms, they're permitted to drill oil, so they got pipelines that go all over the place, you know.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And, you know, it's like dialing 811 right before you dig in front of your house. You better know.
That's right.
You don't want to cut in front of one of those lines for sure.
Right. So so in Washington, I'm on number 4.
Yeah.
So the big winner was Kevin McCarthy, Speaker, and he was able to maneuver the House Republicans into raising the debt limit until 25.
Couple of years for the debt limit.
The Senate passed the bill, and the president signed it into law.
You know, one of the big guys that we've talked about, and you talk about quite a bit, Garrett Graves is one of the big negotiators.
That's
of that.
right.
So I don't know if that's going to have any play. I guess that's more financial than line item stuff.
He's well respected on both sides of the aisle, and that's why he was used when they got to a point where the president and the speaker and the Senate guys they were button heads. Garrett went in and talked to other senators and other that was for the Senate side, and they respect him. So he was able to convince a lot of them. He did a lot, and I have in my notes that Garrett and Graves and Scalise very engaged. So consider praising them whenever you see them because they did a good job.
Now, how will that affect what you do? I mean, you guys are lobbying a lot, and you're in Washington a lot. So how would this new debt limits and a cut in spending, as minute as it might be, how it might help you guys?
Well, I mean, look, we're gonna ask for what we need and spend what we get, okay? The good part about it is our delegation is behind us, okay? And they know how important it is. The debt limit is something that the whole country we had to get past because they don't balance a checkbook like we do. They just raise the amount of money they have. So at some point, sometime it's got to come to a head. But that really doesn't, except for all of the distraction. Okay, mm-hmm. it doesn't specifically affect us unless they cut stuff out of that budget that. For us, and that's what we have our guys there for, to make sure that doesn't happen. And as you can see, our two guys were the leading two, and they're our representatives. So it makes you feel good.
Oh, real good to have guys in the middle of that are in the room.
Right. So key provisions within the Fiscal Responsibility Act. It had to give it a name.
Oh, absolutely.
Relative to port. Permitting reform enables some projects to avoid complicated NEPA reviews, including Go Mesa projects. Okay, I know there's some acronyms in there. NEPA is the National Environmental
Protection Agency.
Yeah, Protection Agency. Go Mesa is Gulf of Mexico revenue sharing. That's the revenues that we ask for from the extraction of the oil and gas. So anyway, that's a good thing because they're finally starting to pound on those permits because sometimes those permits just take forever.
Right. If they streamline the process for a lot of these permits, they can open up businesses to get back to work and doing those kind of things.
Right. So anyway, if the appropriation bills are not enacted by January 1st, this and next year, then total discretionary spending is reduced by 1% based on this year. I don't understand that. But anyway, the measure cuts significant amount of spending ranging from $235 billion to $1.8 trillion out of the budget. So that was a good deal. We should expect increased productivity from Congress on all these issues in the upcoming years. Upcoming months, I'm sorry. So
yeah, we'll see what a lot of those budget things are, the way it's going to go downhill. And like I said, we're still waiting on a lot of the big packages that were there, the infrastructure bills and those kind of things that are you all pieced together. There was a lot of money in for ports and those kind of things, and so all of those are what you're going to piece together to get your
and this year we're only asking the federal government for $500,000. I'll say only, but yeah, we're asking $500,000 because we need to keep the Corps engaged, and they have to do a lot of their stuff on the front end. But hopefully we can, instead of like actually sitting down and designing a project to deepen, we already have the channel on drawings because we dredge it all the time.
Right.
Just change the depth and go. So hopefully we can do that and save a lot of time.
Well, when you talk to those politicians, a lot of times they're talking about shovel-ready things.
Right.
This would be, I would imagine, considered shovel-ready.
Yeah, I mean, once we have all the pipelines lowered, it's shovel-ready. It's ready to go, okay? And shovel-ready also means design, okay? So,
right.
But because we're going to hopefully piggyback on the maintenance side of the Corps, once we lower the pipelines in another year or two, we'll be shovel-ready.
Yeah, because... as you talked about, look, we've been talking about Morganza the Gulf for 28 years or something, and now we're finally starting to see some of the federal money that comes in. So, yeah, it's nice to have something that is all ready to go, design-wise, permit-wise, all ready to go. So when the funding does come in, it's ready to go.
Right. And then I also made a trip to D.C. Week before last. And we flew in on a Tuesday, all day Wednesday we had meetings, and we flew out on Thursday. So it's, I think we had somebody with a little watch counter. We walked 6.5 miles inside of buildings to get to all the meetings in one day.
Wow.
That's how big those buildings are.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
You can walk around there for sure. So who are you talking to?
Well, we talking to our delegation, the delegation staff about what we need, why we need the 500,000, what we're going to think we need next year and the following years, and kind of laying out the whole project to them so they can see how it, see where the needs are going to come in, okay? Because the Corps, once we get the pipelines lowered, there is a match on the project, but it's 80-20, okay? So the state's going to have to pay 20% of the construction, and the feds are going to have to pay the rest. So that's the money we need. We need that pipeline to stay open because once we get to that point, we're not going to be able to go to bid unless we have the money. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we got to get the federal government, and our delegation knows that. They know how to navigate all that stuff, And
you talk to more transportation people or environmental people?
Both. It's we talk to a lot of chiefs of staff too, I mean, they kind of oversee everything. Yeah. And that's who you really want to meet with. So we actually met with Kennedy. We didn't meet with any of the other ones. They were all busy. We were going to meet with Scalise, but
they were in the middle of the shutdown, possible shutdown. Right,
so anyway, it was when you go like I went, it's very tiring. You get home and man, it felt like you got run over by a truck because. Right. You fly in, we actually had one meeting on Tuesday evening, go to dinner, get up the next morning. Of course, over there, it doesn't start 7 o'clock in the morning like my day starts. It starts at 9, know. Right. But we had meetings till 6, all day. Didn't stop. So you got to explain your story every time. It's repetitive, but you get better at it,
right? Sure.
So
Groundhog's Day.
That's right.
But no, it's awesome, and look, it's part of what you got to do for sure. But we appreciate the updates, man. Thanks so much for being with us.
I'm glad y'all had me.
All right, that's Going Public. I'm Harry McCullough. We'll see you next time.